Today, Mary Rose and I are joined by Simon and Emma. But just to introduce the session, if you've not been before, my name's Hannah Fox. I'm the Director of Alumni Community Careers and Network Development at Regent University London. Mary Rose.
And I'm Mary Rose Delauzun. I'm Head of Alumni Engagement at the Sutton Trust, which is an education and social mobility charity. So Simon and Emma, I wonder if you guys could introduce yourselves as well. So Simon, just say a bit about what your background is.
Yeah, I'm Simon. At the moment, I'm head of community engagement at Uni Taster Days. So we're a company based in the UK that essentially helps schools and colleges form better relationships with the universities by listing their events and offering training and information guides. And prior to that, I've always been in higher education. I've worked at 4 universities. Often on the student recruitment marketing side, which we'll talk about today. But I love volunteering. I'm a veteran volunteer. I've done as much stuff as I can with CASE and lots of other conferences too.
Thanks. And Emma?
Hello, everyone. I'm Emma. I'm head of content marketing at IE University in Madrid. I've been at IE for 8 years now. I've done alumni communications, social media, and now I do content marketing, which is essentially like an in-house creative agency for the institution, to sum it up a bit more. And I've been on this role for 4 years now. So everything related to creativity, videos, text, and everything, it's my department out there creating the magic.
Great, thank you very much. So for anyone who's not joined us before for Trials and Errors, this is an opportunity for us to grill Simon and Emma on some of their biggest mistakes that they've made, and we're going to hear about how they learned from those as well. So the way that we run it is we'll ask each of them individually to share their example, and we'll have a chat about each one. So please do throw your questions in the chat as we go for Simon and Emma, and we'll ask those towards the end. So I think we're going to kick off today with Simon, if you wouldn't mind sharing your example.
Yeah, my big one in the world of HE marketing is an email misfire. I think we've all had those moments of cold dread when an email goes to the wrong person or many wrong people. So mine was like a few years ago. I was working at a big university. I just wanted to send a very targeted email to a small group of people who were interested in studying modern languages. And using the system I was using, I had to build quite a large kind of formula to make sure it went just to that specific group. And obviously segmentation is important. But just to put it into perspective, the formula to get that segmentation right, I had to like scroll down my screen to see the entire formula. And sadly, one single character, a bracket, was in the wrong place or out of place or missing, something like that. And it was the difference between emailing 300 people or 53,000 people by mistake. So yeah, it went and it kept going and it kept going. And by the time I recognized the error and hit pause, 53,000 people by mistake. There's that cold moment of dread when you realize what's happened and you can't even begin to see the wood through the trees or how you would fix it. Ultimately, it could have been worse. We don't work in brain surgery, nobody died, but at the time you think, oh God, I've really disgruntled, confused, upset people who are considering studying at our university. So in terms of what I did next, the issue kind of highlighted itself by having these confused replies suddenly come into the inbox. And that in itself causes immediate panic. But the first and foremost, my advice would be to tell people, don't sit on that piece of bad news. I worked at a brilliant university with stacks of helpful teams, so I told the right people, I went to the right level of seniority, and they just rallied. They were there in support. There was no blame. It was very much a solutions focused attitude, community. And yeah, we mobilized, we brought in the right people, we spoke to admissions, we spoke to the kind of CRM specialists. We were able to approve the wording for a short but polite apology. And then we broke down the confused emails that were coming in and sort of worked out what we needed to say to each one of the groups within that pool of confused people. But the most telling thing is, though, like, Yeah, we only really had close to 100 confused responses out of 53,000, which restores my faith in humanity. It makes people realize, well, yeah, it probably was just a mistake. People didn't necessarily jump to too many conclusions. And sometimes like perspective is a wonderful thing, and you sort of realize, well, yeah, it could have been much, much, much worse. So yeah, that's my most famous mistake, I would say.
Thank you so much for sharing. And I feel like we've had examples like that before. And I think every time I talk to someone about something like this, everyone feels that sense of dread when you talk about those emails starting to come in. So yeah, hard relate from all of us. And thank you for sharing. I mean, I suppose I have lots of questions, but it's really nice to hear about, in general, the fact that it was quite positive. Everyone rallied round, the fact that you were able to mobilise and get a response out quite quickly. Reflecting back on that, was there anything specific about, I guess, the way your leadership handled it? I mean, I'm guessing your manager was one of the first people you told. How did their approach, and how has that informed how you would perhaps deal with that going forwards? What reflections did you have from how those people who mobilised around and rallied, how they responded? How has that kind of shaped you and going forward from that?
Yeah, I mean, it was very, very kind of affirming and reassuring that, yeah, I went straight to my line manager. I explained the situation, and her reaction was exactly what you'd want. You want someone to be like, okay, just immediately calm, asking questions, and then coming up with what needs to happen next. So she signposted me to somebody more senior. She said where that other person was on campus, because obviously you can't just email somebody about this. It needs to be fixed quickly. And that's where the value of being on a campus in real life really kind of came to play. So yeah, I found the more senior person very quickly, as instructed by my line manager. And then she brought in other bodies from sort of adjacent departments, and until we had like a fairly small SWAT team to sort of fix the problem. And yeah, it really is one of those things in a university where like communication is everything. We hear it time and time again. You need to make people aware, because it kind of touched upon, it almost like trod on the toes of many different teams and sub teams. And you need to let the heads of those teams know, because forewarned is forearmed, really. And if it had turned into a bigger issue, that would have been super valuable. I suppose the most telling thing though is that sort of several years later, I was at a different university in a more senior role, and one of my team essentially did the same thing. I mean, it didn't go to 53,000, it went to 28,000. So I was like, oh, that's nothing. You should have learned what I did a few years ago. But yeah, I was just channeling that day, like it was almost like reliving it. And I was like, okay, well, my manager was calm and asked questions and looked at solutions, and that's exactly what I did. And again, I passed it up the chain. I made sure teams in different sections, different silos were all aware. And yeah, we became solutions focused. We rallied the other members of my team. So we had, again, like a project team to sort of reply to all the confused emails. And we got through them again quite quickly, because it really is a small proportion of people that kind of email back. And yeah, being hyper optimistic here, it does expose maybe certain flaws in systems or ways of doing things that, yeah, you can fix, and it might lead to a better way of working a year later or many years later.
I think it's really interesting, Simon, what you're saying about the fact that you had the people that were there on campus, and that communication piece, and find the right people quite quickly. And I've got a question in a second around panic versus speed. But one of the things that I was thinking about when you were talking there was a time when I was at a previous institution, and somebody had made a mistake, and then the email chain started, and it was email after email after email, and everyone was going back and forth. And my manager stepped in and just said, stop, everybody get in a room together and we'll discuss this. Just there were so many emails and panic going back and forth, and it really sticks in my head where she was just like, stop, we need to come together and talk about this, stop emailing. But my question is more around how do you manage that differentiation between reacting in panic versus reacting knowing that you need to do something quickly, but kind of taking a step back to know that you're making the right decisions? Because I think we've all been there where we just go, and fire something off as quickly as possible. But yeah, how do you kind of manage the difference between the two?
Yeah, I think we all know instinctively we should take a breath before you can try and fix a problem too quickly, and it just sets fire to the problem even more. I think we all know that instinctively. So I think the art of catching yourself from diving in is, I think ultimately it comes down to practice and experience, and I think we all get there. I think you have like it's very topical to the series, but the more mistakes you make, the wiser you become. The smartest person in the room is the one who's had the most bad days. So a lot of it comes down to experience. But it absolutely is the right advice. And there's this expression, and I don't know who said it originally, but it's called grip self, grip team, grip task. So you need to get a grip on yourself, first and foremost, in any situation. So if that's deep breathing, if that's taking a walk, if that's just counting to 10, whatever works, then it's about the team around you, or the teams around you. You get a handle on those. And then when everything's in line, everyone's informed, that's when, exactly like you said, Hannah, you can sit down and get a grip on the task, or in this case, a problem.
I love that. What was it? So it was grip self, grip team, and grip task. Love that.
6 magic words. Yeah.
That's the takeaway from this session already. So thank you for giving us the tagline. I love that.
I love it.
I was just going to ask quickly about, when you talk about this now, you seem really relaxed. It seems like hopefully your confidence didn't take a massive knock given the way that your team responded to it. So I suppose I'm curious to know, when that happened with the more junior person more recently, how did you kind of support them, I guess, to make sure that their confidence wasn't too damaged? Because I know that as managers often it can be quite a tightrope to know, like, you want to make someone feel like it's fine and you're dealing with it and you want to move on, but you don't want to make too much light of it that they don't think more carefully perhaps next time and look, as you say, for the things that could be improved in the process or something to avoid it happening. So what was your approach as the manager to kind of supporting them with that kind of confidence, but also helping them reflect on what could be different next time?
I suppose ultimately I saw it as a duty of care to a team member, and it wasn't, it was somebody somebody I directly managed. It was somebody sort of I suppose two steps down, but a really credible person as well, which is almost what made it so heartbreaking. Like, actually somebody who was almost serving a notice towards an internal promotion. So they were in a good place career wise. Everyone thought very highly of them. I think that almost makes it harder, because it is like a knock to their confidence, and they had every reason to feel confident generally at work. So I duty of care, reassuring, sort of kind of putting into perspective the fact that it's not the worst thing in the world. It's an email, and generally people are smart. And I was very forthcoming immediately with the fact that I'd done it myself, like years before. I'm sure there are different types of leaders in the sector that might not have been as kind, but I think kindness costs nothing, and it achieves everything. So always kindness first. And I suppose everything's a learning curve. It did expose a flaw in the system we were using, and that's worth knowing. And ultimately, it's kind of like a learning curve for everybody involved, including the person themselves.
I completely agree that everyone has done that, and I suppose sometimes Hannah and I drop our own fails or mistakes into these recordings. So if it makes you feel better, Simon, I can share that when I was at London Business School, we did one of our first Giving Day campaigns, possibly the first, and I was definitely at least shared responsibly for the fact that we sent out our email saying the Giving Day has started to a massive segment of our donors, and it hadn't. It was 24 hours early. We sent the wrong message, so we got all these people trying to give on a button that wasn't live yet. So that was fun, but I think we managed to turn it around and got some people donating the next day. But it happens to the best of us, like you say. So I love that.
That's quite nice. That's like a nice problem to have. It's like, please let me give you my money.
I think that's a nice problem to have. Whether the senior leadership found the same perspective, we'll see. But it had the good outcome. And do you know what? You see companies do that all the time now. Say like, "Oops, we sent you the wrong message. Our sales now live." I think it's becoming a tactic sometimes. So if in doubt, you can always channel that line, I suppose. But I love your approach to duty of care. But sorry,
I also think that's a really good point that we have maybe touched on before, Mary Rose, around when is it the right decision to highlight the mistake and send the apology email and say, "Oops, we made a mistake," versus maybe we should just let that one go and not highlight the mistake. For both of you, I'm sure you've both got thoughts and reflections on that.
I think you have to acknowledge it, and I think a super short, apologetic, open email is good, and giving people the option if they want to opt out of future communications, just to give them that option. But I think the reality is if most people didn't reply to the wrongly sent email in either situation in my career, um, and and that's either because they understood that it was a mistake, or let's be honest, they probably didn't see that email or give it any second thought because our inboxes are more crowded than ever before. And if they're not going to see the first email, they probably won't see the apology either. But just to be belt and braces and sensible, I think that apology always has to go. Um, but I think it's not a blanket apology. In both cases, we had probably a template or seven, sorry, probably had 7 templates. The vast majority would have got one template, which was apologizing. And then we had nuanced templates depending on the sorts of questions that were coming back. But like I say, probably only 100 people who emailed back with a challenge or a question. But we at least personalized our responses a little bit with 7 templates.
I think that probably leads us quite nicely on to Emma, asking you to share a bit about yours, which I know there's some common themes. So yeah, could you tell us about your mistake, your error?
Yes, of course. I'm gonna piggyback on Simon's real quick because that also happened to me in banking. My mistake is another one, but I'm gonna speak of this one real quick, which is that I sent an entire marketing campaign for I press play on a full-on campaign in banking, and it has a lot of disclaimers, and I had no disclaimers because I was new to this digital marketing position, and the legal department called me and they were like, well, we're going to get sued in 2 hours. That campaign does not go down. And I was panicking, swearing that I was going to get fired. And after I fixed everything, about to have a full-on panic attack, my boss told me that this happens to everyone, and some of them have these issues on printed media, and that it's quite a common mistake for new people in banking just because we're not used to the fact that we need to put disclaimers and everything. So I really appreciate the fact, and I love that Simon said this, when it gets treated with, I would say, empathy and care for the fact of how that person feels. It's obvious that you didn't want to send that email incorrectly, and it's obvious that I didn't want to press play on that campaign without the disclaimers. It's just that we don't know that. It's, I don't know, the things about being sort of new to a task and being a leader now. I see that a lot with errors that my team makes, and for us that we've done it before, it's a bit you should do it this way, but obviously you don't know how to do that. And I learned more when my leader was empathic than when the leader was a bit more rigid and severe on the consequences of that. Because I think for a fact that I didn't want to put on a campaign without any disclaimers, and I didn't want to get sued for something that I put out there. And my boss was super chill about it. She said, obviously you have to fix it now. It was a Friday at 6 p.m. She was like, well, you have to fix it, but don't worry about it. We've all done it. And I learned a lot from that experience. And obviously I never put out something afterwards without a disclaimer. And I have a joke about this because when I got to Alumni at IE, I was like, do we need a disclaimer for the alumni emails? Do we need a disclaimer for social media? I was, imbued with the fact that everything needed a disclaimer because I was so traumatized by that first time. But it was a good learning experience in the sense that I became extremely detail-oriented in everything that went out, because I had a negative experience, but not traumatized because it wasn't a success that my boss took to a point that it was very traumatizing. It was just a very good learning experience from that end. It never happened again. And I'm very detail oriented on everything that I put out now. And I think that when you come from other industries that are far more severe than higher education with legal things and everything, you sort of learn to manage that way. Retail is the same as well, healthcare, insurance. There's a lot of other industries that have things like this. And I think that that's important to have empathy towards that. But that being said, my HE mistake is one that I hold very close to my heart, because we take pride on doing these videos that have more soul into them, videos that are different, bigger campaigns that make you feel something. And we try to replicate like a holiday ad for our institution. And we did this production. We were recording in an Airbnb. It was this video of this student getting back for the holidays as a surprise to her family. And it was emotional, and people were like, it was a crying video that students used to see in graduation, and it was about the hope of always coming back home type of thing. And it was this beautiful storyboard, beautiful video. My team put a lot of effort into it. It was an overnight recording because it needed the light from the dark. It needed no light. It was at nighttime. And it was beautiful. The video was gut-wrenching type of emotional video. And I loved it. I thought it was a beautiful video and something different to see at graduation, because that graduation was on holiday. So it's like a Christmas ad, but also a graduation video. And our graduations are on our big auditorium, and the sound is incredible. It's a huge screen. I was sitting in that graduation auditorium with my utmost pride of this amazing video that my team had created. And as soon as the graduation finished, a dean pulled me to the side and he was like, I think this video is a bit inappropriate. And I was like, excuse me, what? It's what? No, it's not. And they started to explain that in the video, which obviously no one from my team noticed, this student was coming back home for the holidays, and the mother was making the dinner, and the father came in with the groceries, and that it felt a bit misogynistic to the women that she was in the kitchen and the man was bringing the groceries. And I remember in that conversation, I was like shocked. I couldn't believe that this was happening. As a person that is very sensitive to diversity, as a gay person who's a feminist, I never saw this coming. And I have a team of 8 people that none of us saw this. We usually do the scripts. It involves more people. We were in the recording. No one saw this. It was just shocking, because I take pride in having this sensitivity towards the type of content we put out there. And it was just very frustrating to me in that moment that this slipped my mind, because content is very subjective. And obviously I can see a lot of things and not notice the nuances to certain things. And it's not like I wanted this video, obviously, to have this connotation, but I missed out on it. And it was very frustrating. We had to take the video out. My whole team was very frustrated. They were frustrated in the sense that we did it before, but also that we got to the point that we couldn't showcase certain things, that we didn't do that on purpose. We had to take it out. So it's all this rising conversations about roles and everything, and cancel culture and a lot of things that we were talking about. And the good learning thing we got out from that is that we established this like sensitivity committee for things that were going to happen in big events like graduations and welcoming ceremonies and all of this. We put out a committee from different departments to see what's going to go on the graduation. For example, in a welcome event, it was the gender ratio of female to male. And then that felt very old school for certain students. So we got this committee to sort of filter out all of this. And that has never happened again. And every type of content we put has that sort of like check from other people on the team. Obviously, we learn from that. And a lot of people see this video before it gets put out. People from different cultures, from different backgrounds, from different genders, so that this never happens again. And it was very frustrating, but I think people were just like very forgiving. Obviously, we didn't use the video at all. And that part was a bit frustrating, but we learned from that experience a lot in how you treat content, because content is, as we all know, extremely subjective to the realities of a lot of people. And you just have to understand that and allow your ego to be stepped aside and understand that objectively speaking, this can be sensitive and triggering to some people. So
it's such a great example, and one I'm sure that so many people are kind of grappling with at the moment. One of the questions I had, Emma, was you said that you had a team of 8 working on this. Did everyone agree that did everyone say, yeah, no, I see it? Or did anyone go, no, this is ridiculous, that it's fine?
We had mixed reactions, and I can get that because we never meant for this to happen. And we also said it's a reality in some households that women cook and men cook. Like, yes, we showed that, but we're not showing that exclusively women are meant to be in the kitchen. And there's a lot of nuances to how this felt, right? And I had to handle those frustrations because some of my team members were like, yeah, I can understand that. And some were like, no, I don't agree with that. And creatively, I don't agree with that. The director didn't agree with that. So it takes some management. And also personally, I was like, how do I feel about it? But my role is, yes, to understand how I felt about it and manage and navigate my frustrations while understanding that for an important academic figure that will be hosting all the graduations, this was sensitive and I have to manage and understand that as well.
How did you manage those kind of conflicting frustrations within your team?
I remember we had a lot of videos coming up that we were also working on. And I said, honestly, this is the thing with creativity. And we know this. You win some and you lose some. Not every video that we're going to put out there is going to be perfect, fantastic, and loved by everyone. And this is an issue I have a lot with creative people. And I say this by managing a creative team with creative agencies, a lot of agencies, a lot of teams, a lot of people involved in the creative world. We're very uptight about the ideas that we put out there. We are very exclusive, very corseted of the fact that what we created was perfect, was amazing, and it was flawless, and it's perfect, and it makes sense because my brain is just amazing for this type of things. But sometimes we really don't step out of that box. And I told my team, we've been consistently making content that's amazing. Sometimes you win some, sometimes you lose some. You cannot let this frustrate the effort of the next videos or articles or campaigns that are going to come forward. We just have to be better. And that's how we should strive creativity. We're not just creative people, or I'm not just a creative director. I am a head of content marketing, which means that I do exert the role of certain creative direction, but I also exert the strategy for the organization. And I have to translate that creativity for something that makes sense business-wise, brand-wise, and organization-wise. And that is our true role into this. And we need to navigate that. We're going to have campaigns that are going to be different, and we're not going to commit that mistake again. And that's fine. And we've had other videos that were fine. We're going to have other videos that are going to be fine. And maybe we just have to think. I remember this conversation that we said, this is for us having an idea of someone coming home. We have to think even bigger than that, out of the box, like fantasy. There was this amazing idea that we never executed of the fact that like something with Santa Claus. And I was like, no, how are we going to put that? Like, we're an institution, on educational institution. Like, why does playing with the concept of Santa do anything to do with this? It was not that Santa was in, but he was there, but he was not there. And I said, you see, this is why you should go for the crazy ideas as well, because there are other contexts into it. And sometimes you're just afraid for that. And maybe you go with other ideas that feel a bit more safe. Well, obviously not being safe enough.
I really do feel like you sound like you've got such a healthy approach now in terms of how you talk to your team and how you really foster that. Like, we're not going to let this stifle our creativity. We're still going to keep going. So I do love that. But just thinking back again still to the moment that it was showed at graduation and you got that feedback from the dean or the senior person, you said, just out of interest, did you get any feedback from the students and the attendees, like who were watching in that big auditorium? And I'm asking partly because thinking back to Simon talking about those kind of 7 different template and kind of slightly nuanced replies they were sending out to inquiries. Yeah, did you get any broader feedback, or was this very much just the senior person at the institution has kind of viewed it in this way and will respond to that? Like how wide did it go, I guess, is kind of my question.
Yeah, it's very complicated because obviously students are graduating. You don't want to go and ask them, do you think that it was misogynistic that the female in the video, you know, like, you don't want to make a scene out of this. They don't want to hear this. It was the first graduation. We had 600 people at the event, so we could only pull out from staff members. So I took the phone, I started calling everyone, like from Campus Live, from Alumni, everyone sending the video. Do you think this is in any way like sensitive, blah, blah. And then people were like, well, now that you're mentioning it, it's not the best look, it's not the worst look. And I said, obviously, if there are other people mentioning that, it could be sensitive. I remember someone said, I don't think it's that bad, but I could understand why it could be perceived that bad. Like, it depends on the context that you see it. I remember they said, if I'm graduating, would I think that in my graduation video, this is misogynistic? No, because I'm thinking of 1,000 other things that I'm going to do after I graduate and not precisely of this in particular. But I could understand that with the right lens, this could be seen that way. It's not like I just took it off because the dean said it. I talked to a lot of people, and they were like, maybe we need to be, is there a way that we can cut that scene? I was like, no, that's like a core part of the video. It's fine. We'll just take it off. But yeah, I did make sure to try to understand from others.
Yeah, it sounds like you had lots of good channels internally to find out. And I suppose you probably protected against any feedback by not showing it at more graduations, right? Like if you continue to show it, maybe people have commented. So
we stopped. We had a graduation that afternoon. We're like, no, we cannot put it there.
I love that. Well, look, thank you for sharing about that. And I think being so honest and kind of reflective on that, because it's such an interesting one, as Hannah said, and not really something we've had come up before. And I think something that you've kind of alluded to, you kind of ultimately can't completely protect against that creativity. People are going to have different ideas. So it's a really interesting one to share. But I think it slightly leads us on then. I wondered if you could both talk a bit about, separately before this call, we spoke about your kind of joint example and how you have different working styles and your different approaches, particularly I think in relation to planning conferences. So I guess, Simon, do you want to kick off on that? It'd be great to hear from you both about your experience.
Yeah, it's almost like you want to hear from both sides of the so for anyone who's me and Emma, I always jokingly refer to you hear about this expression like work wife, work husband. Well, I always think of Emmanuel as my conference husband. So we always bump into each other on the conference circuit. We both like speaking. And then in 2023, we were both co-chairs of the newcomers track at Case Europe annual conference. So that was back in Edinburgh. And yeah, we kind of brought together this really nice kind of newcomers track. It was lovely. And then a year later, we spoke together for the first time at Content Ed in Manchester. And the joke with me and Emmanuel is like, I'm very much like a head person. I like to plan ahead and follow the process. Whereas Emma's very much a heart person, and he follows his heart, his instinct, his emotion. And ironically, the talk we were giving was called The Head and Heart of Storytelling. So it actually lended itself really well to our talk. But yeah, we always joke, like I got my half of the slides in like a month before. And then the night before, like Emma was still working on his. For me, I was like panicking, and like the day before, I thought Emma's definitely going to be thinking about his slides right now. But he was like looking around the room, like he spotted these beautiful fairy lights in the ceiling that nobody had thought to turn on, and he was like, Simon, actually, I think we should arrange for these fairy lights to be on. And I was like, focus on the slides first, and then he started compiling a Spotify playlist with songs that contain the word head and songs that contain the word heart. And I was like, stop messing about on Spotify. Just get your slides done. But I guess the bottom line is, like, as always, Emma was right. Emma, your catchphrase is trust the process. And like, it works. It works. Emma thrives under the peer pressure of the night before. And you were totally right about the fairy lights, because it made the whole room feel magical and different. And we were both dancing to the songs as people were walking in. So, I will always do a Spotify playlist now. So that's my side of it. Is that all true, Emma? Do you agree?
The what?
Do you agree with that summary of events?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. 100%. I love it because I understand how like frustrating it can be for the other person. That I love this about Simon, but I know he's very organized, and I am aware that it's frustrating for him that I am very last minute. But as a creative person, the last minute in every conference that I go to, I'm like, it's me at 5 a.m. finishing my slides, because that's when my brain starts to go into panic mode, and it's when my creativity is at its top. And I've done it with time, but it's just my process is there, and I wake up the next morning and everything is like perfect and flawless. But I have to go to the edge of my seat in order to have this. And it's good that I do like the fact that I have someone that structures me, and I think that's why we work very well together, because I can be very creative, but my process is a bit all over the place. I'm like I would say the typical definition of the crazy creative. That's me. I'm like all my post-its and my ideas all over the place, and they will make sense at the end. But I can understand how it feels frustrating when you're an organized person. I also think that when you were describing this, I would say I'm an experienced person. Like, I think a lot about how the person will transition their emotions, how they will feel. I'm very detail oriented. Does this come from the banking experience or not? But like, if I see a light, the colors, the music, like I want to give a sensory experience to the fact that people are going to give a talk. Also, because I feel that I want to revolutionize how we go to conferences. I think they're boring, just someone speaking in front of a crowd in a podium, hiding behind a podium in a stage, and it feels very impersonal. So I like to walk throughout the room. I like to put lights. I like to put music. I like to put other inputs. I want people to talk, and that with the fact that Simon is very organized work wonders for us, because I've gone through this process myself. And the organization comes very late. And the fact that Simon had the skeleton of everything made me have more time for that experience. And I think that talk was amazing, I have to say. It was
I mean, yeah, just to pat ourselves on the back. It was a packed room, and like, we had good feedback, and like, but like Emma, you make me better because you force me to relax and do things outside my comfort zone. And yes, I'm always grateful for that. And I always remember when we were chairing newcomers track, like yeah, I guess one of the parts I played was just to get all the speakers in line and make sure we had the slides. But then I remember we were out for dinner that night in Edinburgh, and you were like up on your feet, almost like the groom at a wedding, and you went around every single table and you spoke to everyone, you laughed and joked. And I was too busy just like eating poppadoms. Then I saw you doing it, and I was like, that's inspired me, because I'd regret it if I just sat down eating. So then suddenly I was like following Emma around the room and like chatting and greeting and hosting. And yeah, I think if you look for it, you can find inspiration, and there's a lot of joy to be outside your comfort zone, I think.
Have you two spoke again since that together? I mean, obviously today, but have you done anything? Have you done anything since that session?
We almost did.
Yeah.
So like a year later, Case 2024, that was what was that? That was Manchester. So we were due to deliver that exact talk again. Go on, Emma, you tell it.
And because this time you could not trust the process, because I accidentally got some holidays booked at those exact dates, but I didn't buy the plane ticket. So my friend did, and I didn't notice this until like 3 months before the conference. And I was like, oh my God, I cannot attend. I'm going to be literally in Indonesia at this time. Like, I am not physically anywhere near Europe for this conference. And I noticed that very late because I didn't purchase the tickets, and it was the type of thing that I was like, okay, it's fine. And I couldn't attend. it does not speak well for myself, but again, trials and errors.
I was going to ask.
Again, it led to a really good talk because I still delivered it, and then it forced me to deliver some of the. So Emma's like in an improv troupe in Madrid. Like improvisation is what Emma does for fun, and he had put improv games into this talk. So then it forced me to do some improv, like really outside my comfort zone, but. I like the challenge. And I also started by just making light of the fact that Emma was in Indonesia. Like I don't know if I told you, Emma, I found like a photo of you on your Instagram of you on like a beach, and I put it there on like the intro slide. It's hard to do the head and heart of storytelling when the heart's not in the room, but I think people enjoyed the humor of the situation.
I wondered whether, I was going to ask whether working together the second time round, you'd learned from the first time and you knew that Emma was going to be a bit more relaxed, but so far relaxed, he was lying on a beach somewhere.
so relaxed. But no, if you ever do speak again, like I will trust the process definitely this time, and yeah, I'll hold my nerve, and I know it'll be great.
But I would work 100% with Simon every single time, just because I don't think creative chaos is necessarily better. Even if I deliver an amazing outcome, I do like the structure behind it. I prefer the structure. I feel that it makes my creativity go even looser. Is looser? No, loose. Do you say looser in English?
Yeah.
Okay. Just because I know Simon's gonna have my back in the organization part. Like, is it going to be good if I do it? Yes, because I've done it alone before. Is it going to be better because Simon's there? 100%.
And I'm not complaining. Yeah. I'm a massive control freak, only child. Like I love being in control of all the boring stuff.
Yeah,
and it's like the cherry on top of the cake, you know. Like he brings the style and the heart and the warmth. And I'm just kind of making sure the wheels are going.
Yeah.
That is such a nice kind of anecdote to end things on, I guess, because I know it's a little bit quiet in the chat, so we will wrap up shortly. But I think just the lesson there, the takeaway for us is that like the value of finding peers, whether it's in your current workplace or like in the sector, who kind of complement you and bring and challenge you, as you say, Simon, and kind of bring out the best. Or I love the way you say that, Emma, that like he almost gave you the freedom to be kind of more bold or more relaxed or more kind of ambitious because you knew what was behind you. Like that's the ideal dynamic, isn't it? And I think, yeah, for anyone that's volunteering or thinking about speaking at conferences, that's probably some really nice advice to take away and think, actually, who could you do it with that would really help you kind of elevate it to the next level? So I love that.
I would also say that,
there you go.
That, and I discovered this with Simon, there's not one single way to look at things or present or do things. There are different ways and they can coexist together. I talked to some people about public speaking. I'm too shy. Well, that doesn't matter. You don't have to be the person that you're watching presenting. You don't have to be me or Simon, but that means you can coexist together and there are different styles, and that still makes it beautiful and amazing and different. As long as you put, I would say, your authenticity into it, it's going to be appreciated.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's something, talking of kind of duos and working together on things, that's definitely something Mary Rose and I have been reflecting on in the year and a half that we have been doing Trials and Errors, which brings us to a nice kind of ending moment, really, because this is the last Trials and Errors for the summer. We are rounding off a bit of an early summer break. So thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today and also has joined us before. We're counting up, we've done over 10 of these now with huge, great range of guests that we've had, and we're so grateful. So thank you so much, Emma and Simon, for joining us today. And Mary Rose and I will be back in the autumn. So we're giving everyone a bit of a break from mistakes, and we're going to be back in the autumn with a new series, Trials and Errors.
And as before, as always, if you have any suggested speakers, do get in touch. And I think a couple of our best speakers from the last few episodes have been people that suggested to us through networks or people you know. So do get in touch. Hannah and I are on LinkedIn. Just get us a DM us or drop us an email. We'd love to hear from you. And otherwise, a big thanks to Case and Forum for supporting this series as well. So look forward to hopefully seeing more of you soon. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Thank you. Bye.